specific speaker, also feel free to put that in the chat. Oh, I see that we are recording. Fantastic. Feel free to put your questions for speakers in the chat, and they will be addressed at the end during the Q&A session. If you want to raise your hand to ask a question later on, feel free to do that as well. Yes, as we said, the session is recorded so that it will also become available on the PCP-Wise website. And you can keep your camera on if you like, but that is optional. And lastly, as we are an inclusive community, please keep communications kind and constructive. All right, I will now hand over to my colleague Stefka to introduce today's speakers.
Thank you, Antonia. We have a set of speakers today to guide us through all topics of climate and water resilience. We will start with Rosia Benito from Barrabés and also from the coordination team of the PCP-Wise project, who will tell us a little bit more context about the Webstival and the PCP project itself. And that would follow by the lead buyer of the PCP-Wise project, Headwaters House, led by Joost Boonsma, who is kindly laughing at my pronunciation. And he will tell us a little bit more about the open market consultation that is coming up on PCP-Wise, why this is important, and how can you contribute to that. Then we'll dive straight into regional resilience with Laura Pando from Climate Kick and from the Pathways to Resilience project, who will tell us more about the lessons learned from the Pathways to Resilience, and that should be interesting and relevant for everyone. Just to remind those of you that may not recall, Pathways to Resilience is currently the biggest European project under the adaptation mission, working so far with over 40 regions, and sooner boarding over another 40 regions. Then we would talk about water resilience and how it impacts climate change. That would be Hans van Leeuwen from STOA, and then we would showcase some solutions that we have currently for building resilience, starting from the conceptual model of an embracer for implementing nature-based solutions presented by Ignacio Perez from University of Cantabria and the Embracer project. And we would have representatives of the Valorada project who would show us how Earth observation can be used for base-based climate resilience. And this would be Cristobal Rebeco, who is a coordinator of the project, and also Marc Tondrio, who is leading the technical development of the tools on behalf of Valorada and also from Terranis. As Antonia said, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. We would answer all of them once the speakers are done with their presentations in our Q&A sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our speakers for their time. And I would like to pass the floor to Rosia.
Hello, good morning to all. Nice to meet you. So I'm going to make some general overview of the project. So PCP-Wise is a visionary initiative that is devoted to the development of advanced technological solutions that support water management and climate resilience across all Europe. So harnessing the potential of the PCP, the project strives to bring pioneering innovation to reach up the technology readiness in level 8. So by integrating space-based technologies and environmental observation data, PCP-Wise wants to confront the present climate changes, ranging from floods and wildness to infrastructure vulnerabilities affecting both rural and urban regions. So if you can change to slide 2. Thank you. So this ambitious undertaken project is made possible through the European Union funding under the Horizon program and builds up the groundland laid by the project. The consortium comprises 26 distinguished partners, including 11 public buyers and 15 support organizations. The project's duration is 36 months and the overall budget is 19 million. Next slide. Thank you. At the heart of the PCP-Wise lies is a mission, the strengthen Europe resilience to climate change through innovation, cooperation, and data-driven solution. The principal aims of the project is the technological advancements to develop, test, and refine QTNL's climate adaptation technologies grounded in Earth observation and data satellite, the transnational collaboration We want to unite all the regional water authorities, municipalities, local communities, and crisis response organizations from across all the European Union to enhance the decision-making to produce shared, operational, informed products that provide deeper insight into water, soil, and climate dynamics. The user-centric approach, we just want to foster an active network of stakeholders who will shape, validate, and refine the climate services through all the PCP-wise process. The next slide, please. Thank you. So the expected results, we do have several, the scientific impact, the economic impact, and the societal impact. I'm going just to mention briefly, but of course, we do want to deeper understanding of the soil-water interaction through the space-based analytics to enhance all the capabilities in long-term forecasting for water resources and crisis management, to meaningful contribution to the broader ecosystem of climate science and Earth observation. From the economic impact side, we want the substantial cost reduction through improved risk mitigation strategies, opening of new commercial avenues in the climate services domain, and smarter resource allocation within water management systems. Through the societal impact, we do want the increased readiness and resilience among communities vulnerable to climate threats. It strengthens the adaptability capacity in both cities and rural landscapes, and the greater public safety through the development of more effective emergency response mechanisms. Next slide. Thank you. So finally, the purpose of this PCP-wise Webstival marks the ceremonial beginning of the innovation procurement journey. So our goals are to integrate the PCP process with a spirit of openness and ambition, to raise awareness regarding the forthcoming PCP tender, of course, and its opportunities, to bring together the diverse community of stakeholders involved in all the project, to lay a foundation for collaborative and transparent engagement, and finally, to stimulate the market imagination and in smart, sustainable, water-wise solutions. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosia. I would pass the floor to Joost to present us the open market consultation of PCP-wise.
Yes, thank you. Dutch is really a difficult language, as other languages are also difficult for us. I'm Joost Binsma, and I'm representing the public buyers in our consortium. And Het Waterschapshuis is the lead procurer of this PCP-wise. And maybe it's easier, HWH is our abbreviation from the Het Waterschapshuis. We are the overarching body on IT and data management of the Dutch water authorities. Next slide. And within these 10 minutes, I will give you an overview of the open market consultation activities of PCP-wise, abbreviated as OMC. And I will address the following topics. Of course, the purpose of the OMC, the important dates in the timeline, and also the possible outcomes of this open market consultation, because what you ask us and what you will bring us is really important for this for the success of this process of this open market consultation. This is also the fifth webinar. And we are, it's really to engage possible suppliers and other public buyers and learn about our goals. But we have also to organize the official OMC. It's more or less legally required by the European Commission to contact the market about what we want to have in the end of the process, but also if that or the market thinks this is feasible within the time frame and the budget we have for this process. It's really about a dialogue, and we have several events from which the open market consultation is one, but also this Webstival is very important. Within this dialogue, we want to really have information about from the market if this if what we want is this technical feasible. Is it is the realization feasible within time frame and the proposed budget? We have some questions on that, and you can find these questions, and we really want you to fill in the request for information, and it's published on the EU survey. During the Webstival and the OMC of PCP-WISE, you are engaged to ask questions to us, and of course we will provide you the answers, and we will publish them on our website and on our platform, because PCP is a competition with a level playing field. So all the given information we will get from you will be made public. So we invite you to go to our website and our e-platform. And we already published on our website and on the e-platform our OMC document, in which we are elaborating on what we expect. Next slide, please. Here you find more in detail what we want to achieve with this PCP-WISE. And of course, when you communicate, communication is always two directions, where in this case, the buyers have objectives, but there are also benefits for the participants, and they can reach more out of it by asking questions. So please go ahead. Next slide. Where are we now? And a few important dates. We already have published our PIN, prior information notice, and the OMC document, as I already said, on TED, the website, and our e-platform, and we did that on the 4th of April. And this is already the 5th webinar. So if you were not present during the 4 webinars before this 5th one, please, you can find them on the website in the form of a recording. And you are really invited to watch them. We have our info day on the 28th of May, and we said in previous meetings that it would be the 29th of May, but 29th of May is in a lot of countries the Ascension Day, and in Holland that is a public holiday, as it is in some other European countries. So we moved it to the day before, on Wednesday, the 28th of May. The official open market, and this info day is really important, because there we explain in more detail what we expect and what are the ideas behind PCPY. So if you really want some technical information, please visit our webinar on the 28th of May. The real open market consultation, the official one, we have two events, the webinar on the 3rd of June and a hybrid event on the 12th of June during Expandeo in Brussels. And if we get a lot of questions in depth that we can't answer in a Q&A, we are now thinking of having maybe a third event on the in the end of June, and of course we will, if that is necessary, we will publish that, and we will come in contact with you to announce that. Then I forgot to mention here the open market report, where we gather all the questions and answers and a lot of information more. We have to publish that on the 15th of July. And of course, important, we will publishing our tender document somewhere around the 5th of September. Next. Then the possible outcomes, and that is really important. We want you to put input so we can refine the objectives we have at the beginning of this process, and a refinement of the budget. There is a budget available for this PCP process of 12 million, and that is really money. So we want to know if you can get us the expected outcome for that budget, and it's not a budget for one consortium, but it is the budget for 52322. And of course, is it feasible within the timeline? So it could be that we have to say that we have to refine our objectives, budget, and timeline. And if all market entities says, oh, but that is not possible, then we of course stop the procurement procedure. But of course we expect that is not necessary. I think this was it. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joost. I would like to pass the floor to Laura, who would show us some best practices and lessons learned from the Pathways to Resilience project.
Thank you very much, and thank you also to the previous speakers for the interesting presentations. And I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, because I failed to share my slides in advance, so apologies for that. Just 1 second, and please let me know. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, not in presenter mode yet, but we see them.
Just gonna go and try and do that now. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Great.
Yes.
Brilliant. So I'm gonna, as Stefka was saying, I'm going to speak a little bit about Pathways to Resilience, which is what it is actually. I'm going to talk about first is one of the projects that is contributing to the implementation of the mission adaptation objectives, and it's aiming at empowering at least 100 regions and communities to design transformative pathways to climate resilience, towards climate resilience. It has a total budget of nearly 30 million, of which 21 is actually cascaded back onto the 100 regions that will be part of the program, and it has a 5-year duration. Basically, what we will expect from the program to support regions in doing is to undertaking what we have come to call the regional resilience journey, which is a conceptual framework to facilitate this transformative approach to climate adaptation. And the regions will be expected to produce 4 key outputs, which are the climate resilience baseline assessment, which the first 40 regions are already working towards and submitting towards June this year. And then further down the line in the program, they will be looking at submitting a climate resilience strategy, an action plan, and a related investment plan. So overall, the sort of key objectives and results is obviously supporting these 100 regions to develop these strategies for achieving climate resilience. And that also includes obviously designing those pathways that I was mentioning, but also formulation of an innovation agenda with a related set of innovation actions within that, and the development of a finance and investment plan. We aim at enhancing the capacity and capabilities of these 100 regions as well, and I'll talk later a bit more about the support program to achieve these. And most important of all, this program is really aiming at testing and validating this approach to transformational climate adaptation that we call the Regional Resilience Journey Framework. We basically had a very successful first call. Basically, we received 164 applications from 35 countries. And the first cohort, that was from a previous presentation that related to Poland, so please ignore that. And basically the first cohort of 40 regions were announced in September, and we started working with them in October. This is a map of the 40 regions that were selected. Don't worry about trying to capture all of it now, but you can see the sort of spread, and they're mapped across the biogeographical area of Europe. And we'll share the slides later so you can look in more detail, or just go into our website to check them more. And just to talk a little bit more about the experiment that Pathways to Resilience is and the approach that we have. And obviously, I don't need to mention the point in which we are in history, and basically the sort of lack of predictability now that, we no longer can work towards maintaining the status quo, and we're really looking at what we can do to transform and really tackle the sort of root causes of where we're at as societies. And it's really easy to think that, this is a slide that I really like, because I think we kind of very often think about maintaining what we have, and actually I think we need to start thinking about how we adapting is something that humans have always done, and this is how we thrive as species, basically. And coming up with new ways of doing so is basically our key strength, a creative power as a species. So this is at the heart of the regional resilience journey, and at the heart of this framework in particular is to drive towards a just climate transition. So basically, not just working towards obviously protecting the most vulnerable, in what is going to be a future and a present already, but more and more into the future, a place of risk, especially for the most vulnerable, but actually how we can actually make those local places and their communities thrive at the back of climate action, and looking at transforming and bringing prosperity for all, basically. So within this framework that I will look in more detail later, we have designed 6 phases. You can see them there: is prepare the ground, build a shared vision, design pathways, take action, learn and reflect, and make the new normal. It's not quite as linear as it looks in this donut shape. But just to sort of mention that for Pathways to Resilience, we're focusing on the first 3 phases, the ones that you see in colour in red, purple and blue. And also that underpinning these steps, that they have tasks that I will mention further down the line. There's the underpin, and they're really looking at enabling the regions to start leveraging basically things like knowledge and data and governance and engagement, which are kind of that they're sort of identified as the sort of key enabling conditions, and have been key barriers as well, like also finance and resources, capability and skills, behavioral change, and basically just fostering more experimentation, learning and reflection. So we're working towards a just climate transition, which the IPCC has defined as the sort of 3 core elements of it, to look for distributive justice, procedural justice, and recognition within that of different voices and perspectives. And this is why one of the sort of key things, sorry, I'm just going to skip some slides. One of the key sort of aspects of this framework that makes it, or we have identified, and we feel it makes it transformational, is that it looks at really ensuring this ownership through deep participation of communities in the design of these climate adaptation plans and strategies and the implementation of it. So it is first of all about identifying who should be part of this and ensuring that all voices are included. Obviously every region is unique in this, so there is a thorough, deep mapping of stakeholders that needs to be conducted, as well as a sort of engagement strategy and plan to really bring those voices and those groups so they represented and they are part of the decision making. And then together looking at exploring the scenarios, discovering what is the common ground, and deciding within that what is to be preserved and what needs to change and needs to transform, and together where we're going, and defining that shared vision. And so it's a co-created exercise through the process, and it is iterative. It's not just one step that you take or one task that you do, but actually you keep on going back to the same groups, to the same sort of points and guiding principles to check assumptions and to sort of evolve within this plan over time. And within that, obviously, there's one of the key elements as well of pathways to resilience, and it's in the name. So it really, we try to do what it says on the tin. We really will support this 100 regions in designing these adaptation pathways that look at the short and medium and long term and how the conditions will change over time. And it basically looks at what are the options that we have in this short term, what are the ones that we can explore and maybe unlock in the medium and long term, but actually crucially, what is missing for us to be able to unlock those options in the future, and actually start putting now in place whatever innovation actions and approaches. So basically we can unlock those other options within the pathways in the future as well. So there is no magic wand. This is one thing that we say, and these pathways will need to, these involve very long time horizons. In some cases 50 and 100 years, so it may be even about relocating whole communities as well. So it really needs a constant consultation and going back to these assumptions, but also working hard to sort of setting the ground for the conditions that will need to appear in the medium and long term for those options to be realized. And basically the frameworks and service provision of the program, as we were saying, is the regional resilience journey. And then we concentrate on those first 3 steps. And I'm just basically going to go on to the next slide, because then you can see the sort of different tasks that we have designed under each one of the phases. And phase 1 is preparing the ground, establishing a baseline, which is basically about gathering an evidence base, frame the problem, then understanding the system by mapping the relevant systems and identifying the stakeholders, as we were saying, and obviously assessing risks and vulnerabilities within that, and assessing capabilities. And then on to phase 2 is basically more about this building the shared vision that we were mentioning. And obviously that includes securing high level support, foster that engagement through the strategies that we were mentioning, and basically start designing these possible climate resilient futures and co-create these shared visions, and start reflecting on how change is supposed to happen, so you can revisit what is happening and basically also change direction when it's needed as well. And then the design, the sort of more technical aspect of it as well. The phase 3 is identifying these options for adaptation, assess the effectiveness, formulate the pathways, evaluate the pathways, and develop the portfolio of innovation actions as well to support the pathways formulation as well. And obviously preparing for implementation. This is part of what they have to do as part of the program, and they will have to come up with these 4 outputs that we were mentioning. And we hope that by going through these tasks that, they will be in a better position to also start leveraging basically the conditions to further enable the transition to climate resilience. Parallel to the regional resilience journey, we have also highlighted one of the key enabling conditions, and finance and resources was identified as one of the key ones. So we kind of pay special attention to what need to be done in terms of adaptation to make sure that there is a tangible and a realistic investment plan behind as well. So we've basically attached to the RRJ, to the regional resilience journey, an adaptation investment cycle that looks at these steps and defining regional contexts and addressing financial barriers, defining the pathways, investment needs and strategies, developing obviously a plan for investment, and then a pipeline of bankable investments and projects, basically. And these framework and these steps and these ideas have been supported by very thorough technical guidance, and there's two of them that we have and that will be made public very shortly on the website. Is developing regional climate resilience strategies and action plans, and developing regional climate resilience investment plans. And these are very long but very worth reading guides with step-by-step on how to implement all of the different tasks within the RRJ and the adaptation investment cycle. And on the support program side of things, we're basically supporting the 100 regions that will eventually join Pathways to Resilience through group training sessions that are based on each one of the specific steps. So they're quite technical, but also they provide very hands-on practical approaches and methodologies to really kind of basically deploy in their local contexts to be able to map the stakeholders and bring them along and build together these pathways. And they're designed to build this technical capabilities, basically. And we're using as much as possible. There's mainly online, but also some in-person moments, but through novel experiences focusing on climate adaptation. Sorry, I went through too fast there. And then we also have an element to support the group training sessions that are called innovation practice groups. And these are more dynamic, more interactive, more driven by the regions as well. They're basically looking at fostering collaboration and strategic thinking among participants, but also they're bringing, they're organized around specific themes, and I will go into more detail later. But they aim at engaging a broad range of regional experts and citizen groups and practitioners to address key community systems and the key enabling conditions and underpinning the transformative change. Then there would be some peer-to-peer mentoring. So we're matching the regions from cohort 1 to cohort 2 to support them in their journey. So there will be very hands-on transferring of this sort of learning and guiding peer-to-peer style of learning approach. And then there's also, we have developed a climate toolbox with over 260 tools, very practical, all related to climate adaptation. That some of them are, for, first steps, I guess, and some of them really go very in depth and very technical. So we can share the link as well, so you can have a look. And by the end of it, we basically are looking at 2 waves of 18 months, where these first 40 regions, later 60 regions, 100 in total, will take a moment to step back in some ways, and actually looking at the work that has happened in the region and what needs to happen in the future, and considering possibilities and grow capabilities, and be inspired by others as well, and basically unlocking this regional creativity that we were saying was crucial to enable this transformation that we're looking at. Some emerging learning is basically that we see that actually the central support platform, as we see as a Pathways to Resilience as a central platform, has provided high quality adaptation planning and finance processes, and they clearly have been regarded by different experts and the European Commission themselves as clear state of the art as it is. There's recognition of the value of SAP grants. We see that through the very high demand for the first call. There's good capacity at the moment to absorb them. Most regions have arrangements in place to spend the funds and are showing up and are kind of following up the journey with us. the sort of mission-based approaches, seems to be working. The research community around the different projects in the adaptation mission, they're really beginning to now self-organize and transfer and cross-pollinate learning, which is really exciting and is yielding some interesting collaborations, and flexible time allowing us to provide support to PTOR regions and beyond where there's value added. So despite also, this support, there is also a sense that some regions are still struggling to get started, and in some ways this is related to some regions struggling to find an entry point to the RIJ, and some of it has to do with political windows for action and funding windows and so on, and the context in the region. And also the headspace of the regions. It's a very busy program, so it is demanding. Obviously, we're giving, cascading some money, and they have funds to make that space, I guess. But we know the reality of the regions is that, in some ways they're operating on a shoestring. So it is always a challenge, and developing also a sense of cohort, which is mainly online. That is also proving a bit of a challenge, and that is also related to the use of language when you have to use English across these different regions, where not all regions are 100% comfortable, for example, in that, or culturally they're not as kind of used to some kinds of collaboration and learning styles and so on. So, we're working really hard to really learn what works, and testing and really reacting to what we're learning from what works really. And then one of the things we had identified, and we knew this beforehand, but it's kind of confirmed now, there's significant capacity building needed on finance. This is the one thing that I think most regions really lacking at the moment, whereas others are really advanced on the planning and the strategy. The finance seems to be the one that is missing on most. And in terms of opportunities ahead, we're planning for the second call, which is bound to be launched in mid-May, so very, very soon. At the moment, we have just extended the expression of interest process up until the 2nd of May. And we have already had, I think it was about 35 expression of interest, which is really high for an expression of interest process. So we're really pleased. And goal is to select 60 regions for funding and capacity building program. And I cannot really tell very much about the process itself because I can't. I'm bounded by, not being able to say just yet. But it will be very, very much refined and built from the previous experience of the first call, which is still available on the website if anyone wants to have a look. It's going to be that very different. This is the sort of estimated timeline. It will be open from mid-May or June, depending, up until sort of mid-July or August, and then the selection will happen around November, and then they'll get started in January 2026. So there will be a slight overlap between the cohorts, which is something that we're really happy about. So there will be between cohort 1 and cohort 2, 3 months where there will be some overlap, and in fact we'll be organizing a summit with all of the regions in February 2026, which will be a kind of cornerstone moment for the program. And lastly, the innovation practice groups, we have a second week being organized, and basically just to sort of mention the themes I mentioned the key community systems, which are the 4 that we have selected here: behavioral change, finance and resources, governance, key enabling conditions, and governance, engagement, collaboration, and knowledge and data. And the key community systems are around critical infrastructure, health and well-being, water management, land use and food systems, ecosystems, and nature-based solutions, local economic systems. So effectively, there will be a whole week where there will be 10 sessions on each one of these thematic areas, and each one of them will have a region presenting either a challenge or an example of their practice and their journey, and a group of selected practitioners and experts and community groups already acting on this thematic area and on the ground, supporting the region and their example to further improve it and to also make it translatable and transferable to other regions as well. So they're very hands-on, very practical, and they include regions and other participants as well, and you're very much invited to attend this group. So we will circulate the dates and the login details once they are available, and then just loosely other kind of opportunities to connect. Basically, we're launching a visual platform that will be in June, and then you'll be able to see more information about where regions are at in the regional resilience journey and opportunities to collaborate. You're more than welcome to also explore the elements of the RIJ and AIC, so regional resilience journey and adaptation investment cycle methods and tools, and start implementing them or recommending them to the regions that you work with, and basically start experimenting. And their future calls, even if in this second call, basically there's the European Commission is launching already a call for what looks like Pathways to Resilience 2 and Climax 2 as well. So there's going to be continuation of this funding and this support for regions across. So that was me. Sorry, I think I took more time than I was given, so apologies for that. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Laura, for the interesting presentation. Don't worry too much about the time. I think it's content that we are here to hear. So thank you once again. I would like to invite Hans van Leeuwen from STOA to tell us a little bit more about climate resilience when it comes to water.
Yeah, thank you, Stefka. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it was a very interesting presentation from Laura Pando Martinez, and I think it's a nice bridge to our PCP WISE project, where I'm going to talk about the climate change impact on water resilience in Europe. I'm from STOA on behalf of the 21 water authorities in the Netherlands. It's a research organization and innovation partner of the Waterschapshuis HWH, as Joost just mentioned. Let's see if I can get to the next page, because he doesn't want to scroll. Let's see. Why is that? Page down. Oops. It's too slow. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the European agenda on climate and water resilience, and I'm also trying to try to pin out why it's important to have local action, as already just elaborated by and also expressed by Laura in our previous presentation. And it's very important to have local acting, and because our water distribution in Europe is not in order due to our dynamic climate change. And then I'm talking about the functional to local information strategy. I'm representing also the 11 buyers in our consortium to find out what their real issues are and demands and also requirements, so that we could also define and develop the right technical solutions in the end by the market. And of course, it's also important to understand what kind of practical examples we have on water resilience, and I will tell you shortly about that. And in the end, I want to give you a takeaway. What can WISE mean for those local actors in Europe? So climate change and water resilience, it's very important. WISE is focused on preparedness, and that's a very important part of the crisis cycle. I will explain later a bit more. And we have fast onset and slow onset crisis as a result of climate change, and we need to be prepared and resilient to that. And of course, Europe has been doing a lot of actions already, mostly on policy level, and also on national, international and member state level. And therefore, it's important to have this ability to anticipate that with the local actors of each member state aligned with the other member states. And of course, when we know that the hazards in Europe are mostly water related, I will show you the statistics later. Therefore, it's important to build more intelligence, local intelligence, on the water availability in time, but also in space. And that's a big problem in Europe, that we don't have enough water on the right places, and sometimes we have too much water on the wrong places. So this presentation is about to position our WISE program to provide in the future, in the near future, and that's well aligned with the program of Path to Resilience Pathway to Resilience I just heard. So in the end of 2027, we hope to have blueprints to be better prepared for climate change. So the current European tools to support especially water-related climate policies on European scale are well known, of course. So the weather organizations and Copernicus, but also the ESA, European Space Agency strategy, that just recently focused more and more on hydrology, which is good. But it's also, in the past, it was rather fragmented. So the hydrology part is now part of all the strategies on policy level. And still on member state level, we also need to find out how can we use those different tools to take action on local scale. And that's actually where we can jump in with WISE. And the other thing is that's important to cooperate with each other. So we have to think more cross-border and also cross-management borders so that we can work together in the regions, local regions. Also by our previous speaker, it's stressed that in regional level, we need more activity and more resilience activity. And that's why I adapted. So climate adaptation, it's all about adapting. I just stole one slide of my previous speaker, of Laura. And it's very nice that they end and prepare, build, design, and then we have to take action together. So both projects end in 2027. And I think we are well aligned to find out how can we implement for local regions to have action. So just some statistics. On the left, you see anomalies. So the difference of the mean of a long period, about 30, 40 years, in terms of precipitation. And you see that the Western Europe has a lot of water, while the East and the South have a lack of water. And the same is in surface air temperature. You see also seasonal changes. So it's not long-term changes in water distribution, but also seasonal changes over the different seasons in the year. You can see that also from this anomaly, that a change is occurring in 30 years in terms of temperature, even to 6 degrees. In the east, especially in the winter, you see that the warming is all over Europe. And that you can see that it will also cause a lot of problems with drought and also consequences of drought. I'll talk about that later. The impact, especially on water related, on all different hazards. So on top you see all the hazard types, so from droughts, volcanic eruptions to floods and fires. 50% of the damage and impact costs are caused by water related hazards. And that's important to know because that will take also for the investment later. It's important to understand why we have to tackle the water distribution as part of all the hazards we have in Europe as a result of climate change. So climate risk is an important part on the long term. On policy level, it has really identified, but we need to find out how can we make that more tangible on local acting level. And so we have to be embedded in this overall strategy of the policy level, and then we have to go down to the acting level and try to understand how our member states will translate it to the local risks assessments. And from there on, how can we have the acting authorities like the regional authorities, like water authorities or nature or city managers and crisis managers to be embedded in those different frames in order to reduce the impacts of climate extremes. So therefore, we hope to develop water-related intelligence from the WISE program to act on local leveling, to provide our local managers with the right tools, and also to think cross-border of their management areas, but also cross-border of country areas, and be partners in the same river basins to react and to be resilient to the effects and impact of dynamic climate change. We know that water availability, the pressure on that is caused by numerous sectors like industry, agriculture, nature, public consumption, drinking water authorities. They all need the same water from our same common system. And as a result of this pressure, we also need to understand how our water distribution in our soils over the different areas is organized. And so we have to manage that more dynamically instead of thinking on 10, 20 or 30 years. So, of course, of the short and the long-term effects, we also have to fight the short and the fast and the slow onset disasters as a result of that. And as we know that the current European climate tools are quite large scale and rather generic. However, in temporal sense, they are quite high dense, but it can has a good context and deliver good context like boundary conditions for our local operational management. We want to complement to those existing services and also make local measures more active. And what I want to say is here, this is too complex to explain all, but in the center you see this egg shape, and this is actually where we are working in. So we work with buyers, and we have to adapt to climate change. We have to understand the policy needs, but also to translate it to what are the indicators to support. So the environmental climate variables of Europe needs to be translated to a national and local level, which also requires the right information on the right place and gives also more criteria to what kind of technical information could we provide. In this blue horizontal line, we have the production scheme. Once we have TRL 8 to 9 level of technical information from the market, with our procurement mechanisms, we hope to provide with WISE the operational information to support many functions on different acting levels. So the function to policies and to acting is part of the scheme to drive this technical production of water-related information in the WISE program. And on the left, we have all kinds of projects and pilots to test it and validate it. But of course, the whole process is demand-driven. And we have a cold and a hot phase in many issues when we have water-related hazards. What we try to produce here is day-to-day detailed information, spatial detailed information, about 100 meters resolution, which is detailed for Europe and enough for water management, but also nature management and city management. It's a bit too coarse. We will zoom in there, but we act in the blue areas, so the cold phase of the crisis cycle, so to be prepared and to also better prepared and resilient to events which will occur on the fast and the long, the slow and fast and the slow onset time frame. And we have to learn. So each time we have a hazard, we have to understand what our vulnerability is in each region, not only technical and physical, but also social and economical in community levels. And with a weighted distribution, we understand more and more in time, being exposed to many type of hazards and many intensity of hazards with different impacts, what our risk is. And that integrated risk is also very important on water level to understand, and so to take measures in the end and to be better prepared and also have a good disaster risk reduction planning. And this is the process which can be also steered with Earth observation. So some of the parameters can help us to learn how those vulnerability is built up. for example, in cities, and from there on, but also in regional levels, you can learn what the intensity and the impact of a certain hazard could be. And that helps us to understand, in the end, how to act and also to take measures on the long and the middle long and the short term. So in Europe, this is a publication of the Joint Research Center. You see how hazards are distributed, and where mostly hazards, it's not only water related, it's all type of hazards. But if you know that 50% is water related, then you can understand that, especially in the south of Europe, we have many problems. But also in the north, it's all about water distribution and the effects of too short and too much water availability. And that's why we also distributed from our buyer demands the different test sites over Europe. So the red crosses on the left are the lead test sites of 5 groups. We had about 15 different test sites, and we grouped them in those 5 categories, 2 urban and 3 rural. I'm not going in too much detail on that, but we have now a plan to set up all different pilot strategies and testing strategy and validation strategies for those different regions for different problems. I'm not going into detail, but those are the different problem categories grouped in rural, urban, and fast and slow onset crisis. A typical slow onset crisis could be a structural drought in an area which causes fast onset fires in nature, for example, but also can cause slow subsidence processes in cities, but also in rural areas. And fast onset could be extreme flash floods and local problems, also fires in different regions. So all over Europe, we have now different actors on floods and droughts, and those 2 general hazards will be tested in the WISE program. So based on the buyer's needs and the information requirement analysis we did in the past 3 months, we have now 6 groups of directions of services for urban in the cold phase, or in the regular management phase, urban crisis phase, and on the long term. And those are the wishes of the different actors in the different buyer communities and user communities behind the buyers. And also for rural, we have similar issues, so short and long term information provision, which helps us and also helps the users to understand how could they anticipate and be resilient to water shortage and abundance. So the regular base stream daily 100-meter resolution monitoring soil water vegetation conditions, that would be in the end very interesting to have a cross-border river basin level, and also pan-European if we have enough interested users in the end to build up a business case, a common business case to produce this. And on top of that, that's also part of the base solution, is risk assessments per sector. So each sector has its own limits of too dry or too wet conditions, which could lead to fires or flooding or subsidence or water quality problems and so on. And so it's important also to build up this daily intelligence in peacetime, in the cold phase. What kind of risks are they augmenting or are they decreasing, to take the right measures? And on top of that, from the requirements, we get specific issues, for example, heat islands in cities or agricultural production losses in regional areas. And we also challenge the market to give solutions on that. And in the end, we hope to have an operational blueprint, not only on the technical part, but also on the procurement strategy, so that each member state can also issue their local tailored but generic and also cross-border standardized WISE solution in their own country. So the cooperation, this last slide, the potential WISE climate functions is to increase cooperation and interoperability between the local regions on acting level, in climate sense, to bring right insights and intelligence from the past and now and near future, but also on the long term. And from there on, we can also support the toolbox of this pathway to resilience for the baseline studies for resilience by building reference, but also to help evaluate and adaptation measures and mechanisms which could be more supported with local information on the soil water balance. And of course, it's important to have statistics and reporting and also therefore on water related problems on the long term. For climate, it's important to have long-term policies on local level and member state level, but also in cooperation between the member states in Europe. And that helps us to build better resilience by DRR planning, disaster risk reduction, and also prevention mechanisms by learning by doing, like I just expressed with this iteration scheme. And that was the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hans. That was very interesting and comprehensive. And if we have the time, we may come back to you with a few questions after the rest of the presentations. So then we would like to pass the floor to Ignacio, who would be showcasing the solutions from Embracer, and especially when it comes to the conceptual model for implementing nature-based solutions.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen?
We see it well. You can go ahead.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. The presentations so far have been really interesting, and building on the direction they have taken, we are now going to dive a bit more specifically into the kind of solutions we can apply to tackle the climate challenge. In this sense, the Embracer project focuses on gaining empirical experience and designing a roadmap for implementing nature-based solutions to adapt to the climate risks we face, while promoting the socio-ecological resilience. And today I'm going to show you the conceptual framework we have developed as part of this project, and which lies the theoretical foundation for the local implementation and regional upscaling of these nature-based solutions. So to do that, I will start by providing some context around why we need a framework like this, and I will highlight the theoretical foundations over the framework has been built, okay? Then I will introduce the framework itself, exploring the key components on the framework. And as part of that, I will give you a specific example of how our model works when applied to a specific risk. In this case, the flooding risk that I think could be interesting in the context of our discussions of today. Finally, I will walk you through how the framework can be operationalized in practice, showing how it can help us to identify the appropriate nature-based solutions at the catchment scale to reduce the impacts of flooding risk, of flavial flooding risk, okay? So we are in the midst of a paradigm shift in how we manage environmental risk, and more broadly, how we manage all the landscape. There is a growing demand for integrated approaches that harness the power of nature, of ecosystems, to deliver benefits that help us to mitigate and adapt to various risks. In this sense, unlike traditional gray infrastructure like levees or river channelization in case of the flooding risk, for example, we now have a growing set of measures that rely on ecological dynamics to help regulate risk. These nature-based solutions not only address the primary hazard, okay, but also deliver co-benefits such as biodiversity conservation and also enhance the adaptive capacity since they are living and evolving systems. But we shouldn't think of nature-based solution as completely contrary to this green infrastructure. It's more a complementary portfolio of solutions. So we believe that they should be prioritized more often than the green infrastructures. So the fact is that working with nature-based solutions could be challenging, and in this sense, our framework aims to answer critical questions and where are risks and their impacts occurring, which ecosystems can we use for regulating these risks, and also what management and governance strategies should be considered to regulate risks through ecosystem functions and overcome the barriers to implement these nature-based solutions. So let's now look at the socio-ecological theory that underpins our framework. There are mainly two key foundations: the meta-ecosystem theory, and the ecosystems paradigms. Okay. From one part, the meta-ecosystem theory tells us that ecosystems are connected through flows of matter and energy, like sediments, water, wind, heat. As these flows move through ecosystems, they are transformed by biological components like plants, animals, microbes, and these transformations change the characteristics of the flow that then moves to the other systems. Okay. In this sense, the humans benefit from these transformations. These benefits are what we call ecosystem services. For example, plants convert sunlight, water, and nutrients into biomass that we can eat or use as a material. Or for example, the roots of trees can interact with water flows to enhance social infiltration, reducing the probability of flooding. And this provide an economic benefit by lowering the impact of the risk. So we can actively use these ecological properties to better regulate flows of energy and matter in these areas where we need it most to reduce the risk. Okay, so that said, there are two key points to keep in mind in relation to these statements. The first one is that ecosystem services vary depending on the ecosystem type. For example, its ecological condition, structure, the maturity of the ecosystem. These are factors that make a condition about what type of ecosystem service could the ecosystem provide. But also it depends of the localization, of the ecosystem in the landscape. For example, a hillside forest is in a slope where gravitational movement of water and sediment occurs. Will potentially produce more ecosystem services that a forest that is located in a flat area in which these gravitational movements are not occurring. Okay. The other thing that I would like to highlight is that the supply and demand of services are often spatially disconnected. That means that ecosystem providing the service that regulate the risk may be located far from where the risk actually occurs. Okay, this is very typical in the case of flooding, for example. That occurs here in the lowlands, but typically the ecosystems that are regulating the flows are in the headwaters, of the catchment. So with this in mind, our conceptual framework represents these relationships using the components that we can see here in the slide. The climate and related hazards, the functional units, such as hill slopes, estuaries, rivers, beaches, etc. The biodiversity, the ecosystem services, the nature-based solutions, and the social elements, and also the risk components, hazard, exposures, and vulnerabilities. So here is how we connect all these components. From our perspective, the climate hazard tend to occur in a specific geomorphological features we call functional units. For example, the coastal flooding only happens in units like estuaries or beaches, okay? So these units define also the abiotic conditions for ecosystems to develop. This is the biodiversity component. And ecosystems within these functional units regulate abiotic flows that are and provide also ecosystem services. So we are particularly interested in the services that help to regulate flows linked to the climate hazards, okay? Because these directly impact exposed social elements like infrastructure, populations, and these type of things. And the logic of our framework is that the healthy ecosystems that actively regulate physical processes within functional units where hazards occur can reduce the risk. So by applying different types of nature-based solutions that enhance biodiversity in these functional units, by using the right ecosystems, okay, in the right place, we strengthen the system adaptive capacity and reduce the social risk that we have at the end. So to do this, our framework proposes building climate impact and risk chains, and that this allows to trace how interactions between social and ecological systems result in risk, okay, in a risk and the impacts to humans. So these chains traditionally include hazard, exposure, and vulnerability as main components, okay? But in our model, we also integrate the potential role of biodiversity in reducing the risk. I won't go into too much detail in here because this change requires some time to fully explain, but just so you get the idea that these ones represent a flat risk chain for a mountainous catchment in northern Spain, and it allows us to link biophysical processes across the basin that are involved in generating a risk, and show how existing potential ecosystems here in this part can regulate these processes through ecosystem services. It also helps us to identify the potential social impacts, the vulnerabilities, and most importantly for our case, the types of nature-based solutions that we could implement to reduce the risk. And not just the types of ecosystem we need, but also the place, the spatial localization, the functional units where nature-based solution will be most effective for reducing the risk. With that in mind, let's look very briefly at how this framework can be operationalized using computer models, with an example from the Saja and Besaya basins in the north of Spain. As I mentioned, it all starts with the impact chain, which describes how the risk works in the specific spatial context we are studying. In this case, from our climate impact chain, the most relevant ecosystems for regulating the flooding risk are the forests in hill slopes, which reduce runoff that contribute to increase the flood peaks, okay? The forests in the riparian areas, which reduce the bank erosion and help maintain river channel capacity, and also the floodplains, which can store water temporarily and reduce the peak flow downstream. So applying different nature-based solutions, for example, forest conservation, restoration, sustainable forestry in productive areas like plantations, and also restoring the floodplain connectivity. Applying this all nature-based solution help to reduce the flood risk in downstream in urban areas and infrastructure. So now we know this type of solution that we can apply, but what we need is to know where the risk is occurring and where we need to act. So we start by mapping the hazard using, for example, hydraulic models. We can identify the intensity and frequency of flooding events across the catchment. Once we have mapped the hazard, we overlay that information with the locations of urban areas and infrastructure to determine which are exposed to flooding and how the vulnerability of the system they are. And that gives us the target zones we want to protect using nature-based solutions. But remember, and that is important, that thus nature-based solution may need to implement in other locations of the catchment. Okay, in ecosystem that regulate the risk, for example, upstream or downstream. So to find those implementation zones, we model the spatial distribution of ecosystem services that regulate the flood risk. Here we have the 3 max for each service, the temporal water storage with blue colors as more blue, more intensity or more provision of the ecosystem services. The runoff regulation in different areas of the landscape. In green, we have the capacity of the forest for regulating runoff, and in red, we have the potential capacity of the forest, because we haven't got the forest in this area, maybe for deforestation, that we need to implement or that we can achieve restoring the forest. And the same with the erosion channel regulation. So by linking the current and potential provision of these services to the areas exposed to the flooding, we get these final maps that they allow us to identify and prioritize which hill slopes, riparian zones, and floodplains should be targeted for nature-based solution implementation to effectively reduce flood risk across the water set in the areas that we have here located in pink or green that are the areas in which we have a risk for flooding. Okay. So, and that brings us to the end of my presentation. As you have seen, the conceptual framework we have developed allow us to integrate ecological principles around ecosystem management and service provision into the climate risk management agenda. And it helps us understand which ecosystems regulate which risks, where the ecosystems are located, and what kinds of nature-based solution could be applied to use them effectively. By operationalizing this framework, using models to map hazards, exposure, vulnerabilities, and ecosystem services, we can identify functional hotspots where nature-based solutions will deliver the greatest benefits in managing the risk. And thanks very much for your attention. I hope you found the presentation interesting. I'm happy to take any question or discuss further. Okay, so I'm finished now.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. It has been very interesting to see a practical solution for resilience. And about practical solutions, I would like to invite our colleagues from the Valorada project to also show us the showcases other solutions for resilience. So that would be Cristabel Rebecca, who is the coordinator of the project and will tell us a little bit about Valorada itself and its methodologies. And we'll follow up by Mark Tondrio, who will tell us more about the actual technical solutions that are being built under Valorada and how are they to be exploited.
Yes, thanks a lot, Stefka, and good morning still to everyone. Just a question, are you passing the slides or shall I share my screen?
If you have them at hand, that would be helpful. Otherwise, we can fetch them in a second.
No, that's fine. I can share my screen. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, I don't have them in a presentation modus, but I think that it's now it's clear, right? Okay, it's just not to mess up the two screens I have here. So yeah, so first of all, thanks a lot for inviting us to make this presentation today. I'm just going to briefly introduce the project, and then afterwards, my colleague Mark Tondrio from Terranis will give a deeper dive into the tools that we've been working on over the past few months. So Valorada is a 3-year project under the mission adaptation. We are right now just finalizing our 2nd year, so we still have 1 whole year to test what we've been doing recently. The name Valorada stands for Validated Local Risk Actionable Data for Adaptation. So it basically surrounds the principle that although there are many climate services, a lot of data that can help municipalities and regions to adapt to climate change, this offer of data and information doesn't necessarily get down to the point that local administrations can make use of it. So that link between what's useful data versus what's usable data is still very much challenging for public administrations. So what we're trying to do in Valorada is to develop different tools and different methods to really identify what kind of data is important and relevant for stakeholders. Then, therefore, the concept of value is very much linked to the perception of the end user of that data and information. From there on, develop different methodologies and tools to bring it together, bring it closer to that user community. Okay, so this is an overview of the partners. We have 14 partners from different places in Europe, and we're working with 5 demonstration regions. As you can see, we have a very nice combination of research institutions, but also multilateral organizations such as SMWF and Climate Kick, but also private companies working at the interface between Earth observation and climate data. So it's been a very enriching learning environment for the whole consortium, I would say. So maybe a bit of the rationale behind the project. So climate adaptation and climate risks are context specific, and contexts are very much a debated arena. So really understanding what is important and when for who is an extremely contested question, and we really have to get down to working with local communities to better define that question. On the one hand, as I mentioned previously, climate change is very is presenting itself not as a one single risk, but as previously mentioned by Hans and Ignacio and other presenters, it is a multi-risk and composed challenge for cities. So one year might be too drought, the next year there might be too much water, on some years you just have a lot of water and high temperatures, and then you have an explosion of vector-borne diseases. So those kind of things are becoming like new challenges for cities. On the one hand, there is a lot of data available, climate services, climate data that's available for developing different indicators and different tools, etc. On the other hand, municipalities produce a lot of data, tons of data that could potentially be useful and usable to better understand climate risks. So for instance, the usual example, where do vulnerable populations live and why they're affected? That's information that municipalities gather either from statistics about poverty or statistics about where elderly people live in a city, etc., etc. And of course, when you mix these data sets with climate data sets, then of course you can have a very nice picture of who are the most affected or potentially at risk of climate impacts. And the idea of the project, Valorada, is to shed light on the value of these municipal data sets. And when we understand the value of these municipal data sets, then we can better combine it with climate data, because we can generate a narrative of why climate data, Earth observation data, and municipal data need to come together. And of course, we need specific methods for that. We can develop indicators, which is what we've been doing in the past. We can develop specific tools, dashboards and GIS applications that can help us better communicate the stories and the storyline about climate risk to local stakeholders. And in this context, we have this 4 questions that are the stones upon which our project is built. The first one is, which data is needed to contextualize climate risk? How can we make climate an extreme temperature? How can we use data to really portray it as a local risk? Secondly, which data is already available for this purpose? And this is a very important point in our project. So we're really trying to work with the data that's already existing and the data that is already in the hands of the municipalities, instead of demanding them new data sets to be developed or new data to be gathered, because that is extremely costly for municipalities. And our underlying assumption is that there is value in what's already there. So we want to work with that data and really rescue that data. It's like a little treasure box that we find in every single municipality, and we want to open it and use it. And finally, what value propositions can enhance the climate value of this locally produced data. So we talk about the climate value of data, and that means understanding the climate dimension of the different data sets, either social, economic, or land use data. So our project, just to give you a very quick overview, is divided in 3 stages, and really one stage represents 1 year of the project. And we started the first year really understanding climate risks locally. So we developed different, we implemented different methodologies such as climate impact chains, and then from there started working very much on the construction of local communities of practice within the municipality. We wanted to understand where is the data, who works with the data, how is data shared within the municipality, what kind of methods are used for sharing data and storing data. And then we started developing these data catalogs. So we've basically made very simple repositories of data that can, and we have developed storylines about this data and linked them to specific indicators. And we validated with these indicators with the local communities. And now the different partners that work more with climate services and climate data are compiling additional data sets, for instance, from Copernicus, that can also come together with this municipal data. So we're really making the effort to connect municipal data with Copernicus data. And then here is where the great work of our colleagues from Terranis, for example, comes in, is all the Earth observation data, all these tons of information that's already there available. And then we're putting this all together in one of these catalogs. These catalogs will be made available for future work as well. And but also the idea of using this catalog is all about developing tools and methodologies to apply them in practice for different purposes. Not just for understanding climate risks today, but these data sets can help, for instance, tracking trends, changes within cities, and that demands a lot of participation from the local communities. We can give them data, we can analyze it, provide the data, but then really working on making this data usable for specific purposes. That is a challenge that lies mostly within the municipality. So that's where we're really making the most of this idea of this community of practice, because it is about conversation, it is about training, it is about testing some approaches, failing and moving forward. And I think I will pass it on now to Mark. Well, we have, of course, our website, LinkedIn, and all those different ways to communicate, or by email anyway. And yeah, I think that I'll stop sharing my screen, and I think that I can pass it on to Mark. So I'll be here for any questions that might arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristobal. I'll be sharing the screen on Mark's behalf.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stefka, and thank you, Cristobal. So thank you for inviting us and giving me the opportunity to give some examples of in order to illustrate what Cristobal has just said about the Valorada project, and by giving some example of tools applied in demonstration territories. Next, please. Thank you. So we have basically 5 demonstration areas in the project. 2 are located in France, and we'll see other in Eastern Europe. But basically, the exposure of risk of these areas are, for some of them, similar, but with also very specific ones. So as said by Cristobal, indeed, the main objective of the project is to demonstrate the interest of merging different types of data in order to illustrate and assess the risk exposure, and potentially as well to show how some some adaptation actions can improve the status. So first example is in Montpellier, which is a big metropole in south of France. And one of the risks the municipality wants to assess is the vulnerability of the population against urban heat Iceland effects. So here, typical example where the tool allows to use demographic data from one side, the Earth observation data, including the building configuration within the cities, and climate data as provided by ECMWF portals, including with some downscaling capabilities. And indeed, by using these all these data, we can display some basic indicators for first assessing the risk exposure and potentially measure our adaptation solutions like more vegetalization in some places in the city could improve the situation. Next, please. Another example of that is in Sicoval, which is an administrative structure called Communauté de Communes in France, which gathers about 36 municipalities, mainly in rural areas. And the risk here, which was indicated by the local authorities, was related to the use of water for agriculture sector, and that illustrates very well what has been said before in the previous project. And here again, by using local data like the type of crops which are used in the area, the configuration of the different parcels delineation, the capability for irrigation, and by using the meteorological and climate data coming from ECMWF, we have the possibility to illustrate what could be the water deficit in this area if nothing is changed. And of course, the interest of the project here for the local authorities is to try to demonstrate to the local farmers organization that some agriculture practices must change if the sector wants to be sustainable in the future. Here, typically, we can see the deficit in terms of irrigation, needs for irrigation, which can be double in typically 20 years. And the idea is, of course, to build some scenario where some types of crops can be changed, and what could be the improvement in terms of water deficit. So just two examples in France, but we have other examples in the other demonstration areas. Next slide. For example, in Greece, in central Greece, where the risks which have been assessed here are both the sea level rise, which can create some problems in the coastal areas, of course, but also the assessment of soil erosion and land degradation on agriculture and woodland areas. Just an example to illustrate, and here again, the tool which was used by Terra Spatium, which is a local service provider in Greece, illustrates on the next slide the evolution of the coastal line in the past areas, because as as said by a very famous British politician, is easier to predict the past than the future. And by assessing the past, indeed, we can try to project what could happen in the future on the same coast in terms of coastal line erosion. Next, please. That in Czechia, with the two municipalities exposed again to vulnerability, specifically from drought and flash flood as well. So another illustration of the water problems exposed in the previous project. And here again, we made some analysis about what could be the exposure of these the people to this type of risk by merging and using local data and Earth observation and climate data. Another, and we'll finish here, another experience of the project is the possibility for the different actors to share tools. Typically, in the case of Czechia, the service provider involved in the project, which is as it is, which is in direct connection with the local authorities, is using indeed a tool we made available in order to illustrate and to evaluate the risk exposure and the potential benefits of adaptation actions. So that's just in a nutshell some examples just to illustrate the objective of the Valorada project and demonstrating how some just the utilization of existing data, and that's important. We have not created any further data, just trying to use what is already existing. We can help the local authorities convince the local actors to change practices or to decide some adaptation actions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mark and Crucible. Thank you everyone for the speakers for their time and expertise. I would pass the floor to Antonia.
Thank you, everyone. This was a great webinar, and I apologize that we went a little bit over time. Keeping that in mind, we would open the floor briefly to questions if there are any burning questions. If not, feel free to also reach out to the speakers directly. I think most of them shared contact information on their slides. Otherwise, the presentation were recorded, of course, and you will be able to access them through the PCPWise website. So if there's anything you want to double check or look back on, feel free to do that as well. Well, there are some compliments for the great presentations in the chat, so I think it was a very successful webinar with great insights into the different initiatives that are going on. I think in this case, we can close the webinar here, and I want to thank everyone for their time. Again, apologies for running a little bit late, but I think the great content of the presentations made it worth it, hopefully, for everyone. All right, then I think we will close here. I assume that the recording will also stop automatically when we close. Everyone, please feel free to reach out through the PCPWise website or to anyone you saw here today directly. And just a reminder again that there is a final PCPWise Webstival webinar on the Monday, on the coming Monday, which will wrap up the Webstival. And you can register for that also through the PCPWise website. Okay, then thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You. Bye.